Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing? I am Chris, and I am joined with my mate Mark, and we're here to talk Creed 3, which is the latest entry in, I guess we still kind of have to call it the Rocky franchise. I'm going to back up a little bit because I'm very close to the camera right here. This is one that I've been hyped for pretty much since Creed 2. Oh, we've already got a comment. Hang on, let me just bring that up real quick. JA says... There's a Creed 2. If you didn't realize there's a Creed 2, mate, you're missing out.
Watch it.
But yeah, I've been looking forward to this one for ages. I think it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to make a Creed 3, and apparently they're going to make a Creed 4, but we'll talk about that at the very end of the review, sort of where we think the franchise is going to go from here, and if it even can go anywhere from here. I suppose there's always a way. We'll kick off with that. So you came around yesterday and we actually had a double feature on the Creed films, which was great. I remember when we went to see the director's cut of Rocky, the director's cut of Rocky 4, and I went to your place.
We did 1 to 3, back to back.
Yeah, which you mentioned yesterday that was a lot tougher for you. I thought it was easy. It was a breeze to get through, but
it was quite late when we finished.
Yeah. It wasn't the smartest time.
So we were up early for go to London.
Yeah, and I mean, you were mentioning that. Granted, that was obviously a Rocky film in the cinema, but it was kind of like it's an older Rocky film, obviously, that's been reworked. But this is like the first brand new sort of Rocky film you ever have seen at the cinema. But what's quite funny is that I guess we can talk about our history with like the Rocky franchise and stuff. We'll kickstart with yours because you've got quite a fascinating history with how you got into the Rocky films, and it all kind of started.
It was really weird, wasn't it? So. I think I come round one day and you're watching Creed 2.
Yeah.
And then it kind of inspired me to watch them all. And then over a 3-day period, I think I watched Rockies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Balboa.
Oh my God.
Creed 1.
I didn't know
Creed 2.
I didn't know you watched it that quick.
Back to back, over 3 days. Yeah, I think I did 2 or 3 a day, easy. And then, I come around a couple of days later and I'd watched them all. And
so when you because it was another mate of ours at the time watching it, and did you watch Creed 2 from the beginning, or did you kind of come in halfway through?
I think I come in. I think I come round when it was the first fight between Creed and Drago. So obviously the disqualification.
Yeah.
So that's the first bit I'd seen, and I think I watched it up to the point before you turned it off. Actually, it was when he come out for the second fight.
Yeah. And you've been a fan ever since. I mean, we always quote Rocky now, don't we? Just like it's usually Clubber Lang, actually, isn't it? It's like, hey woman, like we
hey,
yeah. And we were quoting it loads before the film even started, weren't we? So I mean, I guess like bringing it to Creed 3 now. Were you excited for this film? Were you kind of cautiously optimistic? Like, where was your hype at before going into this
obviously
new one?
Knowing Stallone wasn't in it. It was the hardest thing coming in.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about that. But knowing Stallone wasn't in it, and it's obviously he said it's going down a dark route. It was one of those where you didn't know what to expect when you come in.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat really, because I mean, Creed 2 ended with an almost perfect ending as far as I'm concerned. And this is how long is this franchise? Cam is zoomed in too much. Okay, what if I click that? Is that doesn't do? I mean, I can back it up a little bit. Back it up. Pivot. Hang on, if I move back, there we go. If I move back, it's because I need to move the mouse, and I've got to reach. So I'll get my crunches in. I'll get my training montage in as I'm reaching for the mouse. But yeah, Stallone not being in it was a massive blow to the franchise for me because, yes, some people say it's the Creed franchise, but it's intrinsically tied into the Rocky franchise. I love Creed 1. I think it's a fantastic reboot of the franchise. It's almost like a remake of the original Rocky film, almost beat for beat, but Rocky's involvement in it as a mentor figure with, Creed obviously tied into Apollo Creed. There's some really good character drama there. And I still loved it when we watched it yesterday. I was interested to see how they'd hold up because it's been quite a few years since I've watched them. And yeah, it was still amazing. And then Creed 2 as well. Rocky's so important to that because it deals with the Dragos, and obviously Ivan Drago ties in massively to Rocky's past with Rocky 4.
Nostalgic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the drama that Adonis was going through, Michael B. Jordan's character, is in a way tied in nicely with Rocky Balboa's history and his past, and it's kind of both of their pasts like catching up with them a little bit. So Stallone not being in this one kind of hurts, and it does hurt the film for me, definitely. Because Rocky's the heart of the franchise. I mean, how long's the franchise been going on? It's like 47 years or something like that. It's a long time, and eight out of 9 films, and then all of a sudden Rocky's not in there. And yeah, we did do some reading beforehand, because I think there's a lot more at play. I think they're keeping a lot close to the chest. I don't think we'll ever know the full story. But what it looks like is, number one, what you mentioned, in that Stallone didn't agree with the storyline that they had chosen to go. He mentioned it was a darker route, and he didn't like it being that kind of mean-spirited, how someone from Adonis's past is seeking revenge on him, and it being a revenge story. He didn't like that, but also I think it's got something to do with the producer, Irvin Winkler. I think him and Stallone have had like a feud for decades. I don't know if it's to do with rights or money or who owns the franchise. I'm not sure what it is, but I get the impression there's more to it, more at play than we know. But it is a shame him not being there, and he's not mentioned all that much. There's a couple of lines that Michael B. Jordan says that some of Rocky's teachings. I think he says that, was it one step, one punch at a time, or something? Yeah. He said. There's another bit where they refer to the boxing match from the original Rocky film, where they say that the underdog was given a shot at the title, and obviously clearly referring to that first Rocky fight. But beyond that, that's it. And there are some points in this film, without giving anything away just yet, where it feels weird that Rocky isn't there. I guess that's all we can say for right now before we get into spoilers with it. But so that's kind of our thoughts going in. We're pretty much fresh out the cinema. We've been back for maybe like half hour or something like that. Without going too in depth with spoilers, what are your initial opinions on the film? Haven't seen it.
But for me, wasn't the worst overall.
You'd still put Rocky 5
below. It had Rocky 5 vibes, but it was good, but it wasn't. It was okay. It wasn't good. That's probably a better word to describe it. It wasn't as bad as I expected to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
It had some good fight scenes. It
has some questionable fight scenes as
questionable,
well, which will
that's timeline questionable things as well.
Yeah,
that's the biggest one. But had some good things and some very bad things.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the middle with this one. This is sort of the average to low end of average for me. I don't think it's necessarily a bad film. I think it's got some very good acting in there, especially from Jonathan Major's character of Damien. We'll talk about him in a bit. It's kind of what I thought it was going to be. It's, with no Rocky in there, it didn't seem like it has the same emotional weight to it as some of the previous entries. The previous 2 Creed entries, really. And it seemed like a bit of the magic was, I don't know, it lacked that drive for me, this one. This felt like it wasn't really a story that needed to be told. I felt like the whole crux of Creed's storyline kind of ended with Creed 2. He came face to face with ultimately his family nemesis with the Dragos, and it was a really nice ending for Rocky, for Adonis, and for the Dragos as well. And then we just kind of get this one, which is almost, I won't go so far as to say it feels like a cash grab, but it doesn't feel as inspired of an idea maybe than the previous 2 films. That's kind of it for me. I don't feel that Michael B. Jordan, I mean, he's a charismatic dude. Like I like the character of Adonis, but he's not as interesting to me when he's on his own.
Yeah, especially like the end of Creed 2, especially when Rocky says it's your time now. This film doesn't show like it's his time. It very quickly cuts to his end of his career, pretty much, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's gone into promoting, and he's no Buddy Marcel, is he? Or
we see. I mean,
Washington.
The film pretty much opens up with his like final match, isn't it? Really, before he goes into retirement.
He's second against Conlon, and
you do get some. I guess this is like a minor spoiler. You get some familiar faces returning. You've got Ricky Conlon coming back from the first Creed film. You've got Victor Drago back as well. I think that kind of did get spoilt for me because I think I checked the cast list and I think I did see.
I didn't actually know until until I saw him come in.
But it helps sort of like tie it back into the previous two. We'll have this conversation at the end, but sort of viewing this, if this is the last one of this Creed trilogy and that's it now, it does kind of bookend it nicely, you know, going back to some of those previous characters, I guess. And you mentioned there, because I was going to bring that up too, about how it feels like a lot of elements from some of the previous Rocky films. You've got, you know, Adonis training someone up who's a bit of a tearaway and who's trouble for his family, and, you know, is kind of like this, you know, this tumor almost that's like growing in his family. He wants to tear apart Rocky's legacy, kind of thing. A bit of the same of Tommy Gunn vibes in there from Rocky V.
Yeah.
There's a bit in the training montage where there's iconography. It kind of looks very similar to like the beach scene from Rocky 3. There's no running down the beach though this time, or embracing in slow motion in the waves. But and then there's like running up to like the top of a hill and just like yelling, which reminds me of Rocky 4. There's a plot point as well where there's a boxing match kind of halfway through the film that felt a lot like Rocky 4 as well, like that, you know, the bit I'm talking about there where Jonathan Majors has that fight.
Yeah, it's kind of Drago, Apollo kind of feel.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't die, but.
And I think the thing is as well with this is, and maybe this isn't even like a criticism levied at this one, because I guess you could also levy this at the Rocky films as well. You can kind of predict exactly how this film was going to go, almost plot point for plot point, in terms of, you know, and here's the thing, like after Rocky 1, spoiler alert for the first Rocky movie, I guess, where he loses, which is massive because the film's not about boxing. It's a film with boxing in there, but it's really not about that.
The underdog, isn't it?
It's the underdog story. It was eventually become a series that became about the boxing, especially when we get to like Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. But as soon as he loses, you're not going to have Rocky lose again in Rocky 2. And if he wins in that, you ain't going to have him lose in 3. So it's sort of a similar thing now. You know, Adonis loses in the first one, he wins in 2, and you kind of know what you're getting in for, really, with this. Let's talk about Jonathan Majors real quick then. So the villain of this, we've got Damien. So there's this whole backstory how, you know, they were childhood friends together. Adonis has never talked about him, and I guess they do kind of explain why we've never heard of this character in this film. The real reason is they hadn't created this character yet. That's why. But
didn't know about him.
But they mentioned that as soon as he got out of that situation, he did just kind of turn his back on the whole situation to better his life, kind of thing. And there's this whole like quite hard hitting backstory where they grew up in the on Skid Row, basically, kind of thing, and they were troubled kids, and he was like this close into like getting into like gang crime and stuff like that, but managed to get out of it. 18 years in jail, he's back out again. You've seen it from the trailers, and then he wants a shot at the title because he feels like Adonis lived the life that he never had. Yeah. What did you think to that dynamic, that story between the character and our new villain for this film?
It was a good villain. It was a good villain. I won't lie about that one. I think he very easily got his shot, whereas in reality, he would never have got that shot straight away. How he got that shot was questionable. A little bit of underhanded tactics. Are we allowed to spoil?
Hold the spoilers just a minute, because we've got a comment here. Sorry, I'm just reading that. That just really made me laugh. The goo in Ant-Man is an old Native American ceremony, turd and shrooms. Okay, it's good to know, my dude. Derpy says, I'm potentially seeing it tonight. Was it good or not without you getting into the heavy stuff? I thought it's not a bad film. It's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. This hasn't like ruined the franchise for me or anything like that. It's not that deep. It's just kind of average to me. I think Stallone's absence does hurt the film for me, and it doesn't feel as emotionally impactful, both as a Creed film and also as part of the Rocky franchise. It's just kind of okay. It's just kind of another addition, really, for me. I don't think this is. I think this is going to be the least watchable of the Rocky films / Creed films for me. Like I would quite happily go back, as we did yesterday. I would quite happily go back and watch Creed 1 and Creed 2 because I love that story. But this one, I'm just like,
next time you watch it, it'll be if there's a Creed 4.
Yeah,
just to remind you.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's not something you'd.
So there you go, Derpy. You've been. Well, that's my view. What about yours? Are you kind of in the same boat as me on that one?
Yeah, if I watch it again, it'll be because Creed 4's coming out and I need to refresh my memory. Or if it's on TV and you just want something on in the background. It wasn't a bad film, but
I really did like Jonathan Majors in there. I think he's an actor who's being talked about at the moment. He's going to be like the next big thing. He plays Kang in the new Ant-Man film, which I'm not watching because it looks terrible and I've heard it's terrible. But he did play Kang in the Loki series, which I did watch. And if you compare his performance in that to this, it's just completely different. So he is a really good actor. And I don't know if you got this impression from him as well, the way he played the character. He seemed very unhinged, like all the time. He was almost like a guy that could snap at any moment. And it was really unsettling to watch it. Even when he's reconnecting with Adonis at the beginning and they go for food, there's this really awkward
aura about him, there's
this awkward tension between the two of them. And he's like smiling and he's laughing at his jokes and stuff. But there's there's something beneath the surface there that's waiting to come out. And obviously we see that when he gets in the boxing ring. Definitely Clubber Lang vibes. He's not as exuberant as Clubber Lang.
No good catchphrases.
No, not so much. But in terms of that, like this guy has been like he's prison strong. Like he is hungry for this title. This is all he wants.
He knows the dark ways of winning.
Yeah. He's got the black shorts on as well at the end, like Clubber Lang. Like this guy is ruthless. Even built like Mr. T was. Like he's just absolutely massive. So fair play to all of them in this film for getting in the shape that they did. Maybe it was that, you never know, it's Hollywood, but there's a bit in the training montage which I will say the training montage in this one, it's not awful, but it didn't give me that like
the pump factor.
Like fuck yeah, I'm gonna go out on a run right now as I'm sat there eating my cinema snacks.
Not your Creed 1 or Creed 2 training montage.
Yeah, but there is one bit, and in the cinema I did kind of let out like a wow, I was blown away. It's the ropes. Yeah, it's Jonathan Majors, and he's like free-handed. He's like pulling himself up on 2 ropes, and he's like pulling himself, letting go, and then he goes all the way to the top of these ropes.
He starts to pull up to the top.
Mental strong, absolutely mental. So that bit was cool. But yeah, I liked his character. There's okay, we're getting into spoilers now. There's a nice redemption arc, and you mentioned this. I was thinking it too about the deleted scene. If you want to talk about that, like the whole ending.
Yes, obviously in the deleted scene for Creed 2 is you see Creed go to Drago at the end of it.
In the locker room, isn't it?
Yeah, the locker room, and obviously the pep talk, and it's a nice embracing moment between them. It should have been in Creed 2. It worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
But this Creed obviously puts that at the end of it, where he beats his rival, and then he goes and talks to him. And it's like water under the bridge.
Yeah,
and it's kind of.
Do you feel like it was earned? Because Damien was a son of a bitch in this film.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and some of the things he did.
I guess it is kind of tragic. Like they do have that moment where it's like no hard feelings, but the scene on the beach to me.
Yeah,
made him almost completely irredeemable.
See, I thought that we were going to go down a Rocky Five scene of like a street fight.
Yeah,
because he's got a sucker punching on him, and he lays in there, and he's got the gun in his pocket. And he thought, "Oh, how's this going to go?" And I thought that's a little bit unforgivable. And then it gets to the fight, and you think this should be a dirty fight because obviously in his first fight he should have been disqualified. To be fair. Because Drago was disqualified for less. Really.
Yeah.
He got a punch after the bell had gone as well. He didn't get disqualified. He got an elbow in, didn't he? Yeah. But yeah, for the actual fight scene, you'd expect more dirtiness, and there really wasn't.
Well, let's talk about the boxing in the film actually, because that's one of my biggest negatives in this film. Now, I'm guessing this is from. I've got to blame the director on this. Now, the director of this film is actually Michael B. Jordan himself. This is his first film, his directorial debut. And all of the Rocky films, really, and the Creed films, they've got a very distinctive style about the boxing and the way that it's filmed and the way that it's shot and everything like that. I thought they hit a real sweet spot with Creed 2. I love the boxing match in Creed 1, don't get me wrong, but with Creed 2, it felt so cinematic in the way it was shot. You felt the impact behind every punch. This one, there's some weird stylistic stuff that they do with the boxing, almost pretty much from the opening scene, actually, from the opening boxing match, and it really didn't land for me.
It's like a prompt in a game, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it feels like a video game, and even the way it's shot, and maybe I'm wrong with this, maybe it's just because they shot on digital cameras or the lighting or whatnot, but there's so many scenes where they're in the ring where it doesn't look quite right. It doesn't look like they're in like a real arena. It looks like they've got a ring and then a green screen behind them, or they've just gone crazy with the extra lighting in post-production or something like that. But it looked fakey fake a lot of the times when they're in the ring. And maybe that was the case. Maybe they were in front of a green screen. I'm not sure.
There was a couple of good shots here and there. But
yeah, it wasn't awful. It
felt like a game, this one.
It was the slow-mo shit. It was like finding the weak spots right from the beginning. Yeah. And there's these really awkward bits where he's like coming in for a punch and it will go into slow-mo, and then it will do like this weird zoom in on Creed's face as he's like checking out the weak spots, like the ribs or
the common part, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was. I tell you what it was. Have you ever seen the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes films?
No.
So there's a bit in that where it's called discombobulate, and because Sherlock Holmes is like super smart, he's in like a bare knuckle fight at the beginning of the film, and he's already planned out the entire fight in his head because he's so smart. He's like, guy's going to come in with a jab, I'm going to counter it with this, and then I'm going to come in with this shot, and then I'm going to go for the body, I'm going to uppercut him, and he's like planned it all out, and it's all slow-mo. He's like discombobulate him, and he like chops the side of his neck, that incapacitates my enemy. I'm going to take the wind out of him with that. And it felt like that to me, how it all kind of went fast-mo, slow-mo, and the whole fight was planned. But then in the very final fight, they go way off the deep end with the stylistic stuff. And we've never really... It felt very alien to the Rocky films. I think the only time where it's gone like really like hippy-dippy and a little bit weird is probably in Rocky 5 in the street fight when Rocky's getting concussed and he's seeing visions and flashbacks and everything. When that was originally shot, though, that was going to be the final Rocky film. He was actually going to die in that street fight afterwards. So I can kind of understand what we see in the film and how they've cobbled it together. They kind of made it work. But this one, all the audience disappears. And it's just them in a ring with no one around.
It turns into like a really dodgy steel cage match.
Turns into a steel cage match. It's trying to emulate, the prison bars and the prison fights and everything like that. And then he throws him into the corner and it turns into like a wrestling ring almost. There's like a mattress in the corner, like a really old gym style thing, I guess. And I know what he was trying to go for. He was trying to strip away the crowd and everything and say that this fight is about just these two people in the ring and them working out their past, their differences. And I get that, but it felt so weird and stylized. And because we haven't seen that in any of the Rocky films before, really, to that degree, it didn't work for me. So you have round 1 and round 2. This was a big thing. I picked.
We both picked up on this, didn't they? Like in the film, so you have round 1 and 2. Okay. And then it goes to this weird cutscene, isn't it?
It's in round 3 where it starts going weird and stylized, isn't it?
And then they come out of it, and it's all of a sudden end of round 11.
Yeah.
And then it starts around 12. So it's like the quickest fight when it should have been the longest.
And I think the reason that clearly that's meant to be a montage, isn't it? Like that where they're scrapping in the ring, that's meant to be rounds are going by and we're not even aware of it. But how they get around that in the previous Rocky films is that the editing of those montages where they skip a few rounds out, they always have like the title cards of the rounds coming up and the crossfades in the editing, and you get the impression that time is passing. But because we just have them in the ring, we go from beginning of round 3, and then as soon as they come out of this 1 round fight, as you mentioned, like we're about to start round 12, which was and this fight just didn't really have the emotional impact to me as much as the other ones.
Should have done, really. You had that bit where, similar to Creed 2, where he's just down for so long and it's slow-mo, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can, like, they get to the 9 count and it's like he's still down, slow-mo,
He was
Probably
cutting
that-
it fine with this one.
He was
though.
probably
This
at about
was-
15 seconds.
Yeah.
Down, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it's he stands up on the 9 count, and usually they have to allow them a couple of seconds to sort of, put the guard up. What's your name? Like, you okay to go on?
Like Creed too. Like, what's your name? Creed.
But that's still added to the time, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit. But he gets up on like 9.5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that would, that'd be done. So I guess we can talk about Amara. Like, is it worth talking about his daughter in this? She was a little bit obnoxious, but I don't know if that's me just being horrible.
Slight bit of a psycho, but especially with, obviously, the school scene where she genuinely finishes someone. Obviously, there's a lot of sign language in this, which is quite good. How they've
how they did that.
They've gone down the sign language route, which was really good. Kind of don't touch on Bianca's hearing loss at all, really, apart from why she doesn't sing anymore.
They mentioned that it was getting worse and she couldn't perform, so she's taken more of a producing route now to preserve what she's got. So she's not completely deaf, but they've mentioned that it's deteriorated more over the course of the other 2 films.
And all of a sudden, she's like a really successful producer now, isn't she?
Yeah.
Don't really touch on that until they show a couple of awards in the background.
Well, we were trying to work out how many years it is between Creed 2 and this one, because obviously Amara was a newborn in Creed 2. This one, we open with a flashback to 2002, and then it says we jump 18 years later. Now, Creed 1, I'm guessing, came out when Creed came out, so like 2015, I think it was. Creed 2 was 3 years after that, I think. I think it came out in 2018. So if the math is correct, this is meant to take place in 2020, which would make Amara 2 years old. And she's quite clearly not 2 years old in this. She's about 7. I heard a rumor that this was set 5 years after Creed 2.
And she's a lot older than 5.
She's a lot older than 5. So again, going to the Rocky 5 thing, Stallone's son, he used his real son in Creed.
There's no continuity, is there?
Yeah. We always joke about that, how he's like a really, really young... Robert's a really young kid in Rocky 4, and then as soon as we get to 5, he's aged up by like 10 years. Or like getting towards 10 years.
Longest Christmas ever.
Yeah. They were just like, I don't know, ninth year in Russia after the fight. It was just like, oh shit, like that Home Alone moment. Like, what was I saying? So there's okay, if we're going to talk about the potential future of this franchise now, because this is interesting. Again, this is going off Wikipedia, so I mean, take this with a grain of salt. But the future, it says, and I'm quoting off Wikipedia here, on February the 2nd, 2023, Michael B. Jordan confirmed that a 4th Creed film was happening, quote, for sure, and that spin-offs were also being considered. This isn't the first time that we've heard about a potential Rocky spin-off. There's been many different reports and everything over the years. The first one that came to mind was Stallone actually saying that it was going to be a Rocky 7 he was going to make, not a Creed film. This was going to be part of the main Rocky franchise. And he was going to go to south of the border into Mexico, and he was going to train up a new boxer there, which felt really random. And I was like, why? I think this was right around the time that you had like the whole Donald Trump thing, building the wall and the whole Mexico thing. So I don't know if it was something to do with that. You also had his latest Rambo film dealing with stuff in Mexico. So maybe he was just on a Mexico kick at that point. And I read that idea and I was like, that's terrible. Don't do that. Because you've already kind of done it with Creed, training a new boxer.
Bit of Rocky 5 as well. It's just not worth it.
Like, don't do that. Don't do that. And then when we went to see Rocky 4 Director's Cut, we went to the Prince Charles Cinema in London, and they had the film, and then they had like a bit of a Q&A with Stallone afterwards. He wasn't there in person. It was like a pre-recorded one. God, could you imagine if he actually showed up? That would have been amazing.
I mean, he still got a clap.
Yeah. And I think this was around the time it was it Amazon that bought Rocky or MG?
Yeah, so Amazon had it because they actually released it when we were watching them back to back.
And they, because obviously they've got all these franchises now, these big things. They've got the Rocky franchise, and clearly they want to go, oh, well, let's get loads of spin-offs. And Stallone in that Q&A, I don't know if you remember, mentioned he wanted to do a prequel series, a prequel film or a prequel TV series on Rocky's early life before Rocky 1. And he says, oh, it was cool because it would have been like the time of the moon landing and stuff, and we could see where Rocky came from and how he grew up. And I'm like, we know everything we need to about Rocky's upbringing. We don't. We know where it leads up. You know, the story, the main story where anything happens is in the first Rocky film. So I don't like the idea of that. Now, based on the ending of this film, this is like major spoilers for the end of this film, kind of. After the fight's all said and done, it almost looks like a reshoot because it looks so green screened. There's something about the way this was shot that just felt like it was tacked on for an ending. You've got Amara in the ring and she's shadow boxing. Yep. And there's loads of moments in the film where
she wants to pursue a career in boxing, or
she
wants to learn, doesn't she?
She's getting picked on at school by this like bully, and there's a moment where she defends herself and socks this kid in the face.
Bianca's very much against it.
Yeah. But then he's like, you know, I'll teach you a couple of moves. It'll be our little secret kind of thing. The whole school thing never came back up again, which I thought was weird. Because again, that's an element in Rocky 5, isn't it? You have Robert getting beat up on at school because he's this posh kid going to a rough school.
Gets his coat stolen.
And then he learns a couple of moves, doesn't he? Boxing, and then
uses it.
Yeah. But they never really did anything with that. And I thought, oh, okay, that plot point kind of went nowhere. But the film ultimately ends with Amara in the ring and she's shadow boxing. And I understand that Rocky is about legacy and, you know, sons and family names and everything like that. I really don't want to see a spin-off series on Amara, and the way that Hollywood's going at the moment,
that'll be it.
I think there's a good chance it might be. We might get like a time jump to however many years. Maybe another Creed film first and then move into that, but I really hope they don't go the route of Amara Creed. And, you know, you said yourself, it'd be like $1 Million Baby.
Yeah.
Which is a great film, but,
We've
you know...
seen it.
I don't. Well, yeah, we've seen it, and also I don't want that from my Rocky franchise or my Creed franchise. Like, just, you know, it's yeah. If this was the last one, would you be happy with this as the ending to the whole thing?
I'd like to see, obviously, Adonis have a couple more fights, maybe another one with Drago, because obviously he does show up and he's kind of underused in this, wasn't he? He is kind of a bit part in comparison to Creed 2. And then maybe the fourth one, more is for promoter side, but I think it was very rushed.
Yeah, I was just looking at one of the original ideas here, and I don't know how much of this was a rumor, but I did see this everywhere, that Deontay Wilder was going to play the son of Clubber Lang. Now, we were talking about that idea, and I remember at the time when they were saying, oh, they might do a son of Clubber Lang. I was kind of against it, because at that point, you've already done the son of Drago, which is much more tied into Drago's past. And the the Creeds and everything, and Rocky. So then to go to Clubber Lang's son, Clubber Lang has fuck all to do with Creed at all, in any way. There's just absolutely nothing. It would have just been a bit of fan service going, oh, we've got the son of another villain, and you would have probably got Mr. T back it and everything. Now I've been watching Cobra Kai. You still haven't seen the Karate Kid films of Cobra Kai. I'm working on it. I'll get through them, but without giving too much away, each series kind of introduces another villain from the older films, and as they go through. So I would have liked to have seen Clubber Lang again. Yeah. I think that would have been cool to just see Mr. T in something again, because he's just kind of disappeared, hasn't he? So I don't know how many elements of Damien's character are kind of translated a bit from maybe early drafts of what they would have done with the son of Clubber Lang.
Had those vibes, isn't it?
I did the weird tangent. I really liked his boxing trunks at the end. Yeah, it was almost like a gladiator kind of skirt thing. What do you call them? What do you call those things?
I couldn't.
It's like, you know what I'm talking about. It's like black leather skirt kind of thing he's got going on. This looks like a gladiator, so that was cool. Music. The last thing I'll just kind of mention, really, I was actually just kind of let down by the soundtrack. Now, I was under the impression that, oh God, what's his name?
Ludwig Göransson.
Thank you. Yeah, Ludwig Göransson was going to do the soundtrack. The guy who did the soundtrack to the first two Creed films. Love the soundtrack to those previous two films. I think it's it's distinctively its own. It brings in some new, really, really good themes to it, but also the sound of it does sound very much like Bill Conti's Rocky score. I think it's incredible. The music to this film is done by Joseph Shirley, who I think I read did work alongside Göransson on the previous two films. I think he was some kind of producer or something. The music's just kind of fades into the background in this one a little bit. It doesn't seem like it's... There's a couple of moments where those classic themes kick in, but Adonis's theme really... You only kind of half hear it, like maybe 2 or 3 times, and it's a lot more subtle. And at first I thought that was intentional because he's out of the game of boxing and he's not the Adonis Creed that we know. I thought maybe that's why we haven't heard his theme music. And then when he's in the training montage at the end, we get a little bit of it, but it doesn't seem as triumphant. It doesn't seem
none of the training montage were a pump, were they? They were very low key.
Well, I said to you as well, like before, I'm not going to sing it on live stream, but think of a theme from the first Creed film. You've got like Adonis's theme, the main one that plays throughout all of the film. In the second film, you've got that theme that comes back. You can say, oh, you've got Victor Drago's theme as well. In this one, I couldn't tell you a single new bit of music to this one at all.
No.
It's a shame. I thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I get, there are some bits. You've got the main, the victory thing at the end. At the very end of the fight, that came back in. It was nice to hear that again. But yeah, I feel like I'm being really negative on this film, and I guess I am a little bit. It's not an awful film by any stretch of the imagination. As I said, it's got some really good performances in there. Oh, I guess really quickly we could talk about Adonis's mom just dies in this film.
Randomly.
They mentioned that she's had a couple of strokes between films, and then she just
But even
dies.
that funeral, just very rushed. It's like 20 seconds, like if that.
And that's the moment that we were talking about, where there's a moment in the film where we felt like Stallone, Rocky's character should have been there at the funeral.
It's like he should have been there. And another thing was, why did she not get buried near Apollo?
I thought that. I thought
they'd be the same grave, like just obviously different headstone.
Yeah, same.
But didn't show anything to do with the headstone at all. Just him clutching a bit of dirt.
Yeah.
It's just why.
It was weird. I think if you were going to have a moment, if you didn't want Rocky in the film for a lot of it, if you want Creed to kind of stand on his own, fair enough. But if you were going to have a scene where he reconnect, because is it in Creed 2 where he falls out with him, and then he says, I took 3 days on the train to get back here to see you because you needed my help.
Yeah.
Where was he now? Like what? Why has he like come back to help him? So
I think they should have went down a direction, because obviously he falls out with his mum, doesn't he? And then he kind of has the moment with her before she dies. I think it would have been more effective to his last fight if she would have probably died before having that conversation. So he had more anger going in because he was round with her about Damien.
Can we say they're another parallel maybe to Rocky 3 with like the death of Mickey and the death of his mom kind of thing? Or it does kind of feel like a hodgepodge of a lot of ideas from the previous Rocky films. I guess it still has the identity of its own. You've got the new backstory, I guess, with Damien and Adonis. So there is a little bit of heart to the story there between those two characters. But for me, the Creed films feel stronger when they've got Rocky in the mix, and you've got that mentor-student dynamic between the two of them, and it keeps that connective tissue between the Rocky films, but they still felt like Creed films. The two Creed films definitely still felt like they had an identity of their own, but it was a nice continuation. So it worked for new fans of the franchise. It worked for pre-existing fans of the franchise. Now you're taking that core element that made all of those films work for almost 50 years. That's going to be weird. And I do think it hurt this film for me. But I think knowing that before going in almost helped me mentally prepare for the fact. If I didn't know if Stallone was in this at all, and then I got there and I watched the film and he wasn't in it, I'd have been pissed the fuck off. But I think knowing that this was the case since like last year or whenever it was announced that he wasn't going to be in there, I think it helped me just kind of go into it knowing that beforehand, I
do want to touch on also is Little Duke's training. He's just, in Creed 1 and Creed 2, you have Rocky saying the bow doesn't mean stop. You have Drago saying when I say run faster, run faster.
Yeah.
With Duke, you got him on a megaphone going, run quicker.
Yeah.
He's not motivational at all in the slightest for a trainer. He's kind of just there to wipe his blood.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I did like the bit where he's running up to the Hollywood sign, isn't he? And he's running in front of the car, and he looks behind. He says, "Hey, don't be looking back at us. You look ahead at the road, like you're running up there." I did like that bit, but
That's about the only bit.
yeah, it's just. Oh, there's a moment where they try and do a line from Rocky Balboa, and they just fluffed it horribly. And I can't remember.
It was a real cringe moment, wasn't it?
It
ain't about hard you hit.
It's that line. Is he talking to Damien's character?
No, it was.
Or is it the Hispanic guy?
It's the Hispanic guy. I think ain't about how hard you hit. It's about your control and
it's just...
you're even like no. It's...
And I thought, you know what? If you quote Rocky there, and if he'd have done it verbatim, I don't know how much I would have cringed at the fact that they were like, "Oh, do you remember that from Rocky?" But because he wasn't there for that line. So that would have been weird if Adonis pulls out that line from Rocky Balboa.
Yeah,
he never that line wasn't recorded.
Yeah, he would have not known about that.
He would have known that, and I think if Rocky had have used that line again to Creed at some point off camera, that would have cheapened that scene. It would almost felt like a rehearsed speech.
I mean, that is obviously, I think, one of the best scenes.
Oh God, yeah.
I've got that on a canvas on the wall at home.
I think a lot of people would say the same thing who are fans of Rocky. You know, if you're going to do like your top 3, top 10 Rocky moments, that speech is easily going to be in there from Rocky Balboa. It's one of the best scenes from that film. So yeah, they kind of reference that. So now I'm thinking about it, it's even weird that they kind of reference that line because Adonis wouldn't have known that line. It should have been a line that he'd have been taught from the previous 2 films.
Yeah.
And I mean, we get that one, as I mentioned, the 1 step, 1 punch at a time or whatever it is. So you get that one. I'm trying to think if there was another one. There's the shadow boxing in front of the mirror.
Yeah. That's
Creed.
From first Creed, yeah.
And then there's probably some other ones, but they're the main ones that come to mind, I think.
I can't think of any more.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of future of the franchise and from how this one shapes up. In terms of a Creed film, I don't know what else you can do. You're going to have like Amara growing up and maybe wanting to get into boxing, and Bianca not wanting her daughter to go into boxing. You know, maybe going, it's not a woman's sport or whatever, and maybe they're going to do that whole thing. And if they handle it with tact, maybe they can make that work if Amara's boxing. But I just know what Hollywood's like at the moment, and the whole agenda stuff that they do with this kind of shit. And I'm worried that they'd go off the deep end with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, women's boxing exists, so like of course they could do that if they wanted to. But in terms of actual Adonis Creed, because you were saying that, well, he's retired now, like what else can they do? And I fired back with, well, how many times did Rocky retire?
Yeah.
After Rocky 1, he was done. Ain't going to be no rematch. Then he rematches him, and then he becomes heavyweight champion of the world in the opening montage of Rocky 3. Fights, and then he announces his retirement in Rocky 3 at the press conference.
Yeah. And then he quickly comes out.
And then he comes out of it when Clubber Lang challenges him. Then
he retires again, and then because
he and then he
he's
comes
the coach
back out
for Apollo.
He comes back out to fight Drago. Then he retires again in Rocky 5. Comes back for Balboa.
All of a sudden, his health issues go away for Balboa.
Yeah, they were never really consistent with that, were they? Because they mention, is it after? Well, it's just after the Drago fight, really, isn't it? They say.
Yeah.
What's the one where they say like he's got brain? That's after
5. Yeah, because he starts having the shakes.
They say he's got like a detached retina or something. Like they're saying, like literally one more punch to the head and you will die. Because that's how, as I mentioned, he was going to die at the end of Rocky 5. But then, that's just forgotten. And he's getting beaten up on in Rocky Balboa. So,
how much punching he takes? It's.
I mean, when you really break it down, Rocky Balboa is ridiculous because no one would get a boxing license at that age.
No, not in a million years.
So you have to, it's the movies. It's not real life, and that's fine. That's fine. Like my favorite 2. my favorite Rocky film, you have to say the first one, I think, overall, really, for the story. But my favorite, any day of the week, if I'm putting one on, it's Rocky 4.
Rocky 4. Always Rocky 4.
Or Rocky 3. It's either 4. They're the fun ones. 4 and 3 are the fun ones. 1's the serious one.
Balboa's emotional.
Yeah. I even like 2. I really like 2. There's some bits where I get really frustrated at Rocky, where he's spending all the money and he's buying that, and that seems a bit out of character for him. But then you think, well, he's never had this amount of money in his life, so he's going nuts with it.
Curve for him.
Yeah.
Rocky 5 has its few bits.
There are some fantastic bits in that film, and the thing is as well, what we got to. So you really love Rocky Balboa. We love Creed 1 and Creed 2. You wouldn't have those films without Rocky 5 taking it back to basics. I can understand why they did that, because 4 is ridiculous. 4 was made from like the music video age of the 1980s. There's so many videos.
I love the montages in that one.
They're great. They're all brilliant. But there's like the whole film is a montage. The whole film's shot like a music video. And even Stallone said that. It was intentionally shot like that. But then 5, I can understand why 5 was like, okay, 4 was fucking ridiculous. We had like a robot in there, for God's sake. Let's rein it back and kind of take it back to its grassroots. So I don't like the way that they go back to that situation. The whole Paulie and embezzling money or giving like power of attorney to their accountant.
Yeah.
And fucking them up. But yeah, so I don't think this is a bad film. I stand by it. Out of all the 9 Rocky films, I don't think there is a single bad one. It's like this one and Rocky 5 for me. I'm probably going to give the edge to Rocky 5 just because I've had more time with it. I've literally seen Creed 3 once today, and that's it. But you've got Stallone in there still. You've got Measure of a Man at the end, which is a great song. You've got the Mickey scene. Talia Shire's fantastic as well as Adrian in there as ever. And you got George Washington Duke, who's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. So
for those reasons alone, I'm still going to give the edge to Rocky 5. I know you prefer this one to Rocky 5. I can understand why. 5's not fantastic. It's got a lot of problems. But I guess final thoughts on Creed 2. Would you recommend the film?
Got Creed 2 or Creed 3?
Creed 3, sorry. Creed 3. Would you recommend it?
I could quite easily watch Creed 2 and think, okay, that could be the end of it. And if you like the dark route, I'd recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be happy if it would have finished at Creed 2 rather than have Creed 3.
Yeah.
If they brought Stallone back for the 4th, it'd be different. But we would have to know he was coming back for the 4th.
Mm.
I'd be happy if it ended at Creed 2. Creed 3 was a good film-ish. Wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't the worst. As I said, much prefer it over Rocky 5. If Rocky 5 didn't have the Mickey scenes, or it'd be way below.
Yeah.
But I'd recommend you watch it at least once.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't recommend more than once.
I feel like all the interesting stuff was done in Creed. So here's a question for you. Okay, if Sylvester Stallone was in Creed 3 and you have Creed 3 be the second entry of the franchise and your final one of your trilogy is finally Creed coming toe-to-toe with Drago, you're saving like your big main event for last. Maybe that would work, but because you deal with all the Drago stuff in movie 2 and it's done, and I feel like all the main baggage of Adonis's character with his father and the death of his father and everything, that's all sorted in movie 2. You've then just got to create this random backstory for a new villain for 3. So that's where I kind of stand with it a little bit, really. My final thoughts on this, I don't think it's a bad film. I do think it's very, very average. I'm not going to be rushing back to see this anytime soon. You mentioned at the beginning, I think genuinely the only time that I will watch this again is if Creed 4 is coming out and I want to recap on them. Even if I was doing a marathon of them, I feel like I'd still stop at Creed 2.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound at that point. If you want to just be completely completionist, I suppose you have got to do Creed 3. But I didn't get any kind of additional closure to any characters or, emotion or anything like that from this film. That's, you know what, this felt like Toy Story 4 for me.
Yeah.
It's like I watched it, I tolerated it. It's like average to sort of like middling average for me. It's kind of like an epilogue, I suppose, if you want it, but really the story was complete in the last film. That's kind of where I'm at with this one. So it's not awful, but I'm actually curious now to see what Stallone's story idea. Did he even have a storyline ready to go for this one?
Was he just all mouth?
Yeah. Maybe it was the Clubber Lang son thing. Maybe that was his idea and they didn't go with it. I don't know.
Very predictable if it was.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that'll do it for our review. If you're a fan of the Rocky franchise, like you probably went to see it tonight anyway, or you planning on seeing it this weekend, go and see it. As I say, it's not a bad film. If you're a fan of the Creed series, go and watch it. It's not going to like destroy the franchise or anything like that for you. Before we sign off, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. What is the date today? Is it the 3rd? Is it the 4th today? What is it? It's the 3rd. I have
now the 4th.
Oh shit! I have exactly 9 days to get a shit ton of films watched. I'm going to have to average like 2 films a day. The 95th Academy Awards are happening for us in the UK, the early hours of Monday morning on the 13th of March. I will be going live. I think it starts at 1 a.m., but I'll let you know what time I plan on going live as and when I find out. For more information on that, follow me on Twitter. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I'll post all the times that I go live on there and let you know what's happening with stuff on the channel. It's going to be the big push to those Academy Awards for the next week, so expect a lot more videos. And in the meantime, if you've seen Creed 3 or if you're planning on seeing it this weekend and you come back to this video, let us know what you thought of Creed 3, the Rocky franchise, and everything in between. It'd be really good to hear some opinions on this movie. And thank you for everyone that tuned in and commented along, and I will catch you guys on the next live stream. Take care, everyone.